This is Word and the Wild. It's a one-year Bible adventure with friends. My name is Owen. I'm your host and your guide. Together, we are on a 12-month journey as a podcast plus community where we read the Bible for ourselves, but not by ourselves. And here we are, gang, in week 22, about to cross the 150-day reading mark this week. If you've been hanging with us that whole time, and kudos to you, that is worth celebrating, and it is still giving goodness week after week. For example, this week, we're going to get you set up to soak up some ancient wisdom. We're going to talk about how to crack a proverb and gain the skills to live the good life of friendship with God. That's what's ahead for us this week. So hello and welcome in once again. Just rolling through this journey together. It's not a recap where we feed you bite-sized bits of the Bible. No. This is a freewheeling walk where we watch the story of the Bible unfold like the epic movie that it is. So subscribe here on your favorite podcast platform and share with a friend. It's more fun when we have more people rolling with us. Want to say a special welcome to our Word and the Wild Plus community members. It's their support of this nonprofit endeavor we are on that makes space for all of us here on this Bible reading adventure. As part of the Word in the Wild Plus community, they enjoy access to our private, safe online space where no honest question is a dumb question, seriously, along with weekly live stream Q&A, bonus content, interactions, live stream teaching gatherings, and more. Any of that sounds like your cup of tea? Then check out the show notes for how to become a member yourself, or get all the details over at wordandthewild.com. That's wordandthewild.com. And now, guys, let's dive in to the wild world of the Proverbs. What is success? What is a good life? I mean, these are the kinds of questions that Solomon's Proverbs look to help us wrestle with. And these are big questions. I mean, you might expect these kind of topics to inspire a man with Solomon's encyclopedic knowledge and next level insight to just construct these detailed, long-winded lectures. But Solomon, as we're about to see this week, does the exact opposite. In Proverbs, Solomon tackles these big questions with zippy little zingers, man, never more than a few lines each packed with insights that have crossed cultures across the centuries. Short and sweet, timeless, timely, sometimes charming, always challenging. That's the genius of a well-crafted proverb. And that's what we face in our reading this week. In our conversation, we get to see Solomon at his witty, profound, and focused best. And there are so many little treasures of ancient wisdom packed inside every day as we browse through them. It kind of reminds me, stick with me now. It kind of reminds me of these trips to the thrift store I would take with my grandma growing up. You know, the thrift store. You open the door to that place. It's got a smell. It's distinctive, right? And especially when you're a kid, right? I remember looking around at first at all the nondescript, just rows of clutter. Nothing at all stands out to you. But you know, when you slow down and you start to kind of rummage around, you almost always end up finding something interesting, worth looking at, and sometimes even something useful, some kind of a little treasure that you can't live without. You got to take it home, right? And you have to approach a thrift store with a certain kind of eye. You got to be looking for what you need on one hand, but then you also have to have an eye for something, you know, artful, interesting, unusual. And that's part of the thrill of the hunt. And when you find that thing, right? I mean, that little treasure, oh, it's a great feeling, right? Proverbs is kind of like that. It's just row after row of ideas, tips, insights. As you pick your way through, I mean, it's just, at first, it looks like just a bunch of kitschy coffee mugs and out-of-date avocado green colored kitchen appliances. But as you sift your way through, you finally find that gem. There's a beautiful little nugget of timely, on-target wisdom that you just cannot live without, right? And because life never stops throwing problems and puzzles our way, Proverbs always stays relevant and hits fresh. If we take time to browse, Proverbs just seems to always have what we need right there on the shelf in stock, right there behind the kitschy mugs, right? What is it that we need, right? If we go to Proverbs time and time again looking for that thing we need, what's the thing we need? Well, in a single word, the answer to that question is wisdom. We need wisdom. And when we think of wisdom, we tend to think of intelligence, smarts, intellectual horsepower. But when the Bible talks about wisdom, it means something else. It means skillful living. That's what wisdom means. Wisdom is skillful living. A wise person hones their craft in the art and science of life. A wise person gains perspective and insight to maintain healthy relationships with God, with the people around them, and with themselves, as we all do this daily dance around, over, through, underneath all the nonstop puzzles and pitfalls that life does throw our way. We need wisdom. It takes skill to live and to live well, right? And this idea of needing wisdom to live, it's not new from Solomon and his Proverbs, not by a long shot. See, it's one of the big themes of our whole Bible adventure so far. The idea that life is full of decisions, and our choices matter. And that a good life involves using our power to choose to walk the path in life that results in friendship with God, that results in the good life. Now, we caught glimpses of what it means to walk this path in the ideal setting of the Garden of Eden. Remember that? Going all the way back to the beginning of our story, and the power of choices, right? Adam and Eve. Choices. And then we watched this same theme kind of developed as we walked through Genesis and saw these flawed and faithful few people, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, all try to explore that path. What does it mean to walk the path of life with God? And then from Moses and the Exodus, we saw God's passionate heart to rescue and clear that path for his people to follow. And then through Moses and the law that God gave him, we saw the boundaries of that path with God set in terms of obedience, disobedience, and contractual obligations between the Creator God and his chosen people, right? And then came Joshua. And entering into the promised land, Joshua, the judges, all the way down through even King Saul, it showed us that this path of walking with God, it's a bumpy one, isn't it? And we saw time and again from people like Gideon and Deborah and Samson, we saw how personal, small decisions can end up scaling in big ways that can pull entire families and even whole groups of people toward that path of friendship with God, or to pull them away from it. And then we got to David. David highlights that the determining factor in friendship with God is a heart that loves and longs for what God himself loves and longs for. We learn that love draws us back to this path like a magnet when our love is calibrated toward God as its object of attraction. And then that brings us now to Solomon. Solomon and his wisdom writings give us something we haven't seen before in this conversation of wanting to live that good life, that life that is alive and vibrant and full of friendship with God, that good path. We know that path is there, but again, Solomon gives us something we haven't really seen much of yet, at least in this much detail. Solomon simply gives us the how. How? If I love God and I want to walk his path, how do I go about it? Maybe we've been convinced, yes, that's the life I want. But how do I do it? How do I deal with the day-to-day, those puzzles and problems and questions of life? I mean, the real stuff, marriage, parenting, relationships, sex, lust, greed, booze, pesky neighbors, sketchy friends, work, the in-laws. How do you deal with the real stuff? And that's where Proverbs takes us. Proverbs gets just down and dirty with how to develop a mindset that keeps us walking that healthy, fruitful path of friendship with God, solving the problems, seeing the pitfalls, and allowing the dangers and threats to our well-being that come our way every day just propel us closer down that path with craft and with insight, with skill. In other words, with wisdom. Wisdom for the way, the real life, real questions. That's Proverbs. Proverbs is worth digging around into, and Proverbs is a little bit coy. I mean, on the surface, it's simple, but these Proverbs, you start to read it, and you can feel like it's a little bit intimidating. It's kind of meant to be something you have to kind of pull apart. You gotta wrestle with a little bit. So if you find yourself asking, where do I start? How do I decipher the meaning, unlock the treasure that's hidden inside these Proverbs? Well, let's talk about it a little bit. Let's talk about how to crack a proverb. Okay? And I'm going to walk you through some approaches here. How to crack a proverb. Now, here's for me, all right? First thing I like to do when I'm browsing the thrift store shelves, all right, looking for a proverb I can't live without, I want to take one home with me, the first thing I do is to pray. There's a verse in the New Testament book of James. We're going to get there later this year, but for now, listen to this verse. It says, if you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you, and he will not rebuke you for asking. That's James chapter 1, verse 5. So I take that to heart. I ask God for wisdom. I'm sitting here in front of a book, a chapter, a page filled with wisdom. I need something from it, right? So I ask God to help me. I ask him for insight so I can get something from these Proverbs. Okay, that's the first thing. Next, I spend another few minutes. I'm just trying to be still before I jump in and just allow the things I'm worried about to come to the surface of my mind. All right, is it a financial thing that's got me worried? Is it a relationship thing that's on my mind? Is it a pull toward, a relapse into an unhealthy pattern? Whatever it is, right, the possibilities are endless. They're personal. They are timely. That's what Proverbs is for. It's just immediate insight and help. So I go to God, I ask for wisdom, and then I let the things I'm worried about kind of surface to the top of my mind. It goes against instinct at first because you think you want to read maybe and push those thoughts away, but instead welcome them in to the table, not to let them have the final say, but to let you know what the conversation is about today, okay? And then I start to browse the shelves of the, Proverbs thrift store. And I'm looking for that diamond in the rough as I read. I'm looking for, it's that hidden gem. It's an unexpected insight that sparks my interest. Maybe makes me sit back and smile, shake my head, or sit up and take notice of the warning that it projects. And then when I have it, something pops. I grab it, I savor it, I reflect on it, and I work to kind of crack it open. Okay, and here's where a little bit of strategy can help us out. To crack a proverb, okay, you have to keep in mind how a proverb is built. Now, we've talked about Psalms recently. A couple weeks back, remember, one of the keys for understanding a psalm is to remember the genre, right? A psalm is a poem. It's a special kind of poem, right? It's a song. And knowing that helps you start to get what the writer of the poem is saying. It's a song. It's song lyrics. And that gets you into it. And that sets your approach for a psalm, right? Okay, Proverbs have some things in common with Psalms. Well, no. Proverbs aren't songs. Right? Don't. I mean, you can sing them if you want, but do that in your car where nobody can hear. Just kidding. But they aren't songs, but they are poems. Proverbs are poems, and they're structured. They're a structured poem, and that they have a certain structure to them that kind of sets how they are crafted and created. Okay, let me explain. A proverb is divided into lines. When you look at it in your Bible, all right, you will see kind of like a psalm, right, where the lines of text don't fill each line completely. They're set off like poetry because they are poems. Okay, and poems are divided into lines, and Proverbs are too. Proverbs are divided into lines that come in pairs. Okay, stick with me now. This pair of lines is called a distich. Distich. That's a pair of lines that make up a proverb. Okay, in a proverb, the relationship between those pair of lines tells the story, the relationship between the distich, okay? That's the key to cracking the proverb and getting the nugget inside. Most of Solomon's proverbs are a single distich, just a two-line pair. Once in a while, you'll see one that's a few pairs of lines kind of fused together. That's okay. That happens sometimes, and it's the same approach to understanding it that we're going through here. But remember, Proverbs are lines that come in pairs, okay? So when you pick a proverb off that thrift store shelf, ask yourself this question. What's the relationship between the two lines? Okay? And we're going to walk through a few of these possible relationships. In fact, there's several, but I'm going to give you 5 that are like the by far most likely ones you're going to see. 5 kinds of pairs that you're going to see in a proverb, because a proverb is a pair of lines. All right, let me talk you through it. It's going to make sense. Don't get scared. It's going to sound a little technical. It's just a way to help crack the proverb open and get at the meaning. For example, here's the first pair of lines you might see in a proverb. They're called synonymous. Okay, it's synonymous lines. And that means the second line in the proverb restates the first line for some clarity and emphasis. Once again, the second line restates the first line for clarity and emphasis. For example, let me give you a proverb. I'm going to pull out Proverbs 11:25. Okay, it says, "The generous will prosper. Those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed." Okay, so you take those two lines together, and together they give you your meaning. They're synonymous. The second line restates the first. Right off the bat, we're going to see here that how you remembering how these proverbs come in pairs is just going to help you steer clear of missing the meaning. Listen to this proverb one more time. The generous will prosper. Those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. Now, what if you just ripped the first half of that proverb out of there and made it into, a nice poster you hang in your house? The generous will prosper. All right, boom. Well, you might get the idea that the generous will prosper is some kind of a promise from God, that if you give to people, then God will make sure he gives back to you, kind of a karma type of thing. Oh, but that's not the meaning at all, because we remember that the lines of this proverb go together as a pair. We understand that being generous isn't just about money, and that prospering is so much bigger than profiting in a financial way. Because these two lines stack, they help give the meaning. So to prosper here is parallel to enjoying the feeling of a cool drink of water on a hot day, being refreshed. All right? And if you have a cup of water to share, you share it, because sometimes you're the one who needs a swig from the cold water in the canteen. That's the idea of this verse. It's not about karma. It's actually about kindness. The generous will prosper. Those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. Be kind, right? And kindness will refresh you. Yeah. And that's all because we just kept our wits about us and remembered that this proverb was a synonymous proverb. Okay, here's another proverb pair. This one is antithetical. It's an antithetical pair, meaning the second line contrasts the first line to bring clarity and emphasis. Instead of synonymous, which means they restate each other, the two lines, antithetical, the second line contrasts the first line. For example, here's another one. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 1 says, "A wise child brings joy to a father. A foolish child brings grief to a mother." Now, do only fathers feel joy when they have a wise child? Do fathers not care at all if they have a foolish child? Of course not. Don't be so literal, guys. It's a proverb. The second line contrasts the first line to show us that the opposite of a wise child is a foolish one. And wisdom in a child brings her parents joy, brings his parents joy. All right? Because they're antithetical lines. Easy, okay? Here's another one. Another kind of proverb pair is synthetic pair. Synthetic. We think about the word synthesis, meaning getting meaning from blending two together. Well, in this case, in a synthetic distich, that's the technical term. You're learning so much today. Synthetic pair, both lines in a proverb share a common theme or a core idea that ties them together. Okay? Let me give you an example from a proverb. Proverbs chapter 10, we're there. Let's skip down a few more verses. Let's go to verse 18. Proverbs 10:18 says, "Whoever conceals hatred with lying lips and spreads slander is a fool." First line, whoever conceals hatred with lying lips. Second line, and spreads slander is a fool. Okay? Synthetic, they have a core idea that ties them together. Here, in this case, both of these lines are about words. They're about hurtful words. They're about untrue words. And the proverb is teaching that to engage in such behavior is the mark of a fool, someone who is unskilled at life. You don't want to be a fool. You want to be wise. So you don't want to conceal hatred with lying lips and spread slander, right? That's the theme that ties the two lines together. All right, real quick, two more for you. Here's the next one. Sometimes you're going to see a pair of lines in a proverb that are integral. Integral. That means both lines build on each other to form one complete thought. They integrate. The lines fit together like the pieces of a puzzle to make one big idea. Here's an example. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 31. It says, "If the righteous are rewarded here on earth, well, what will happen to wicked sinners?" And the topic of this proverb is the outcome of an individual's life choices. It's a two-line question where both lines link together to make you think. Now, think about it in this case, it's if someone who lives a life of friendship with God enjoys the benefits of that kind of life, how do you think God will handle his enemies? Apparently, our choices matter to God. That's the idea behind this integral pair. The writer of this proverb serves up a deep existential question in a little more than a dozen words. I mean, that's the magic of a proverb. All right, and then one more possible pairing, okay? This is a comparison pairing, a comparison distich. This is where the first line is compared to the second line. This one's easy. A lot of times you see the word like in this proverb. For example, here's one from Proverbs 23:13. "Like a snow-cooled drink at harvest time is a trustworthy messenger to the one who sends him." You see the word like in there. Lots of proverbs use this type of pairing, very common. These are similes, metaphors, and some of these can get just wildly memorable and really entertaining. So, hey, just pick one up off the shelf, turn it over and over in your mind, smile, enjoy, and ponder. You know, that's how you crack a proverb. Start by finding a proverb that catches your eye. Look at the pair of lines in this special kind of poem that we call a proverb, and then ask yourself, what's the relationship between these two lines? It could be synonymous. The second line restates the first line. It could be antithetical. The second line contrasts the first line. It could be synthetic. Both lines share a common theme or a core idea that ties them together. It could be integral. Both lines build on each other to form a complete thought. Or it could be comparison, where one line is like the other line. All right, now that seems like a lot, but before you know it, that proverb that once was just, looking like another thrift store shelf tchotchke, it's going to shine with a beauty that you can't help but bring home with you. And that's what a proverb is really for. Now, these proverbs can be quite entertaining, and they're meant to be fun in some ways. Have some fun with them, but they do have a purpose behind them that's much more than just helping you pass the time and put a smile on your face. And you can see from all these ideas on how to break down a proverb, how to crack that proverb and look at its structure, that a proverb is really built in a way it's meant to be pondered and processed. And this is where my thrift store metaphor breaks down a little bit. See, because proverbs they're not just curiosities. They really are a training and a teaching on how to live life with skill. Not to get your way or to make it big, but to keep your feet on the path that maintains the friendship with God required to thrive and survive. And for these proverbs, Solomon sees them as a matter really of life and death. And you're going to see some seriousness behind some of the quirkiness of these proverbs. See, taken as a whole, Proverbs describes two kinds of people in life. Some are wise people, and others are foolish people. That's how Proverbs sees life. And then it tells us what a wise person is like, how a wise person approaches life. In Proverbs, we see that a wise person welcomes correction and feedback. We see that a wise person gives thought to their actions, not just living on instinct and impulse. In Proverbs, we see that a wise person seeks outside perspectives, looks at multiple viewpoints to help give them depth and nuance in their understanding. And in Proverbs, we see that a wise person often lets tension teach them. They holding contrasting ideas in mind, like a pair of lines from a proverb where one line is antithetical to the other. Most of all, we see that a wise person lives life with the Creator God as their ultimate authority. When we are living skillfully, what God says is our foundation. What God values is our framework. And where God leads is our direction. Well, a foolish person, on the other hand, a foolish person walks the other path. Their basic instincts are their foundation. They chase what they want. They go where the next impulse takes them. And it may be that they're having the time of their lives all the way up to the point where they aren't. And they have no idea that their party barge lifestyle is drifting ever closer toward heartache and disaster. As you would expect, Solomon is able to take all these big ideas, deep questions, and sum up the benefits of his writings in just a few simple words right at the start of his collection of Proverbs. It's right there, the very first verses of the book of Proverbs. It goes like this. Solomon says, their purpose is to teach wisdom and discipline, to help them understand the insights of the wise. Their purpose is to teach people to live disciplined and successful lives, to help them do what is right and just and fair. That's Proverbs chapter 1, verses 2 through 3. To become a person who is able to skillfully navigate the problems and puzzles of life is a journey. So how do we start? Well, Solomon's simple recommendation for a starting point forms the introduction to the book of Proverbs itself. He simply says, fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. That's Proverbs 1:7. Only a fool would turn up their noses at the opportunity to learn how to walk the path of friendship with God. With the desire to walk with God and value that relationship above all others as your starting point, the path to the good life is open before you. And that's the magic of a proverb. Well, I'm grateful for this opportunity to be with you today. If you are enjoying this word and the wild adventure, if you love it, hey, why not share it with somebody you know, and make sure you have subscribed to this podcast. And all you Word and the Wild Plus community members, once again, big special thanks to you for your financial support of this nonprofit endeavor. Man, you guys are just the best. I'll be seeing you in the wild, our private online community space this week. And hey, while you're in there, be on the lookout for a handy breakdown of how to crack a proverb as some bonus content there in the wild this week. Now, Word and the Wild is a Linehouse community. It's part of the Linehouse Community Network, a nonprofit organization with a mission to bring neighbors together to promote awareness, appreciation, and understanding of the Bible, because friendship and God's Word change lives and change cities. Word and the Wild is presented by the Lumavaz Podcast Network. Big thanks, Lumavaz. And with that, my friend, we're out. I'm Owen, your host and your guide. Until next time, my friend, I will see you out there on the trail in the Word and the Wild. Have a great week.